Good evening, everyone. Hey, good evening. Good. We want you to talk out loud and proud this evening. This is an evening where we're going to talk loud and proud. I'm Larry Johansson, and I'm a member of the council, the Community Advisory Council. I've been asked to sit on it, and this is...
Hi everyone, I'm Wanda Secord. I'm the Executive Director of Durham CAS, and welcome. Nice to see all of you.
Absolutely. Good stuff. So what we're going to do, I've been asked to moderate this evening's meeting, event, and the first thing that we're going to do, we're going to open it up with a libation. And we have Brother Kofi Morris here, who is going to come up and take us through the process of a libation and all of that. All right?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
How's everybody doing?
Good.
Okay, I'm going to ask everyone to stand, if possible. And I'm going to ask our young lady to come up. She's going to assist me a little bit. And so I'm going to explain a little bit of what libation is, right? And what it means for those who may not be familiar, right? So essentially, libation is something that happens each and every day, right? It happens across the continent of Africa. It happens across North America. It happens right here in Canada and Toronto, right? It's a non-religious activity. So if you're religious and you feel uncomfortable or what have you, you're definitely welcome to not participate. However, it doesn't go against any form of religion, etc. So, and a couple things I do want to say, but before I begin, I just want to ask permission for one of my elders to speak. Continuing a long African tradition, I'd like to ask Mr. Clark, if I may speak. Thank you. So permission has been granted. And what is your name, Miss Lady? Alina. Okay, so Alina is going to help me out today, because we know that our future belongs to who?
The youth.
Who does our future belong to?
The youth.
Say it one more time.
The youth.
Because I've been thinking that's why we're here, right?
Absolutely.
That's why this meeting is taking place, yes?
Absolutely.
All right. So I've asked one of our young people to help me and assist me. She had no idea, by the way, that this was going to happen. So she's volunteered herself to support and help. Okay? So I'm just going to ask you to hold this in your hands, just out like this. Why we utilize water? Well, what do we do when we're welcoming someone into our home? We usually provide them something to drink. Am I right? So why we pour libation? Well, libation, again, like I said, is a form of prayer. It's a form of welcoming those who come before us and acknowledging their existence and the importance that they play in our lives. Why we utilize water, alcohol, or any form of beverage is to acknowledge them and to welcome them in a loving manner, in a loving way, right? So I'm just going to remove my shoes as a sign of respect. And in the midst, I'm going to be speaking in Twi, which is a West African form, language, dialect, and I'm going to then speak and interpret it in English, okay? So I'm going to ask for your participation. So when I say something, I'm going to ask for you to respond. It's a call and response. I'm going to say ago. And ago means I have something to say. Ame means I'm listening, right? So we're going to try it out. Ago, Ame. Ago, Ame. Ago, Ame. That's a pretty good. So I'm going to, if someone could tell me which way is east, I'm feeling it's this way, all right? It's going so, it's going back that way. Usually I would try to point that way, but I don't want to put my back to the audience. Okay? So I'm going to be calling upon the names of those in the end of the libation who have passed, individuals who you respect. You could have known them or not known them, but I just want you to say their names. When you say their names, you want to say them loud, because we want to bring their energy into our sphere, because we know that nothing dies, it changes form, right? So I'm going to, again, begin with Ago, Amen. Ago, Amen. Ago, Amen. To Unyami, the divine creator, creators of all living things, for the opportunity that we have to be here today and to give back to our young people. I'd like you to say Insa. And Insa means to drink. To Onyong Kumpong, for the ability to call upon wisdom in all the decisions that we make tonight. In every conversation that we have, that we call upon the higher aspect of ourselves, knowing that that's where we receive the answers that we're seeking. We say Insa. To Abwa J, for the ability to call upon spirit, knowing that even in our prayers, in our times of silence, in our moments of peace, we continue to call upon the energy that gives us the ability to be strong and consistent in the work we must accomplish. We say Insa. To Anansi Kokoroku, the great spider and designer of all things, knowing that everything is interconnected, as is our lives and our relationships. We say Insa. To Asasiya, Mother Earth, for the food, clothes, and shelter you provide us. For we walk upon you every day and we forget you. We forget the importance that you play into our lives. We know that without you, we can't eat, we can't drink. We ask that we call upon your energy as you continue to surround us with good energy, we say inside. To the Abasum, our Divine Mother who nourishes us and gives us a clear sense of purpose here in the West, we say inside. And an Asuji, our Divine Father, for the ability to be consistent and self-determined with all that we accomplish and achieve, we say inside. The Nanatano, the river deity, for the healing that must take place within our communities, for our young people and our children who are abused and in circumstances and situations where they're not safe. We ask that we continue to provide the community that provides that safety and that love and that place of peace for them, we say inside. Nanam Pedra, for all the resources that we call upon to achieve and accomplish our day-to-day tasks and abilities. We ask that we continue to be blessed with abundance so that we can provide all that we require for our village and for our family and for our children, we say inside. For Nana Pedra, for Nana Tigare, for dealing with all external war and conflict, knowing no negative energy forged against us will prosper. Only good energy will surround our space and surround our children, and surround our village and surround our elders, and surround this space and this building in which we inhabit and the work that we're here to accomplish and achieve, we say inside. For Nana Numinsaman, for our ancestors, we say inside. It's I, Brother Kofi, Sir Shaima, calling, giving thanks for this opportunity to give back. I'd like to call upon the names of those who we respect and we revere who've come before us. I call upon Sister Harriet Tubman, I say inside. Marcus Mosiah Garvey, I say inside. Toussaint Louverture, I say inside. Bookman, I say inside. To call upon the names of those who we respect and we want to acknowledge. Inside.
Malcolm X.
Inside.
Martin Luther King.
Inside.
Touré.
Inside. Inside.
Sunday Overture.
Inside.
Ruth.
Inside. Inside.
Harriet Tubman.
Inside. Dudley Laws. Inside.
Charles Roach.
Inside. Inside.
Angela Davis.
Inside. Rasrico. Inside. Bob Marley. Inside.
Robert.
Inside. Inside.
Nelson Mandela.
Inside.
Thomas Sankara.
Inside.
Harriet Chido.
Inside. Inside. Anyone at the back?
I.W. Wells.
Inside. Sandra Bland. Inside. All the young men who's lost their lives, say inside. For all those bones that are buried at the bottom of the Atlantic, say inside. For all those ancestors whose names we don't know, protect us and guide us and protect and guide our children and our youth, say inside. And all these say Madasi. Say Madasi.
Madasi.
Madasi means thank you. Madasi. Madasi Pa. And then we say yo. We clap, 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 clap. Munikasa is finished and it is good. Thank you very much, everyone. Awesome. And thank the young lady for accepting and holding the water for us. And now we're going to pour it into the earth.
So I want to thank Kofi again. Big hand for Kofi. And really, as he was talking, I was just listening to some of the concepts that he was talking about. Something to say, listen, calling on our higher self, our wisdom, the interconnectedness of all of us, Mother Earth. You know, yesterday where they were talking about Mother's Day. And interestingly enough, I was looking at GPS, the Global Public Square with Fareed Zakaria. And they talked about the first mother. And the first mother, they had this picture of Eve. Adam and Eve, of course, they have her as represent her as a white woman, alabaster skin, and all of that kind of stuff. And then we have both Abel, Cain and Abel. And I looked across at my wife and I said, "Who is the original mother? Who is the original mother?" The original mother is Mother Nature. Because Mother Nature is who has given birth to all of us. Mother Nature, and I heard the brother a while ago talk about Mother Earth, Mother Nature. And so part of our thing too is that we have to take care of Mother Nature and take care of the earth, because if we don't, hey, we're not going to live. And he talked about the mother and the father, and community, and peace, and abundance, and good energy. So he has invoked and he called upon the wisdom and the strength of all of these ancestors that have gone before us. So we have every reason to be proud and to be happy that we have tremendous, we come from a tremendous lineage and tremendous heritage. And part of that process is things that we're going to be talking about. We're going to have some discussions around those things. So it's fitting that we're having this discussion at this time when the United Nations has declared 2015 to 2024 the International Decade for People of African Descent. How many of us know that there's a decade has been declared for people of African descent? Okay, great. Not all of us. So we need to educate ourselves about that, and this discussion is taking place under the umbrella, in the context of that. And in this, we're looking to recognize and respect the effort of people of African descent to seek redress for the diminished and inadequate access to education, health, housing, and social security right across the world. The protection and promotion of all the human rights and justice that they're entitled to, and the promotion of their social, political, economic development by governments and the institutions of government responsible for these initiatives. So it's all within that umbrella context that we're meeting here and recognizing that. Of course, we know that the underdevelopment of people of African descent in their countries are the result of centuries of colonialism, of slavery, racism, and economic exploitation. And we think that, that a lot of us seem to think that it's gone, we're all of those things, forget about that and move on, but in truth and in fact, even some of the issues that we're going to talk about here this evening is part of it's within that larger context where we're going to be dealing with issues of systemic issues arising out of these larger historical forces that impact black children and their families when dealing with organizations such as the Durham Children's Aid Society, the justice system, the education system, all of those. So those seeds sown hundreds of years ago, they're still sprouting. And part of our work as a community together, collaborating and working together, is really to kind of, on an ongoing basis, to become aware and to uproot those weeds. I have a lawn and there's dandelions in it right now. How many of you digging up dandelions out of your lawn? Yeah, And every day I get up and that's another weed. And the same way that those weeds are proliferating on our lawns, we have weeds in our head and weeds in our heart, And so what we're doing with the work that we're doing and the conversations that we're going to have this evening, the role of that is to dig out those weeds, right? The weeds of hatred, as Mavis staple, and the weeds of misunderstanding and all of those kinds of things, and really come to some kind of understanding. We have, between the Durham Children's Aid Society and the Community Advisory Council, we really have an opportunity to light the torch and become a beacon of light here in Durham region and across the country. Just having the CAC, the Community Council, is really one of those social innovations and initiatives that I'm hoping that they will take a leaf out of our book, and really take it across the country and say, well, look, we have an opportunity, we can work, we can collaborate, we have difficult issues to face, but we can do it in a spirit of openness and a spirit of cooperation and collaboration, and dare say, love. Okay, great. So to this end, our vision in the CAC, the Community Advisory Council, and the Durham Children's Aid Society, we came together and we talked about our vision. What do we really want to come out of our collaboration over the time that we've been doing it? Because this is the third annual Building Bridges meeting, and we look forward to it continuing. So what do we want to really get out of this when say at the end of the decade? Let's look at it, let's project this into the decade, this international decade of people of African descent. What do we want to come out of this? And this is our vision. Our vision statement is to establish clear and direct communication between the Durham Children's Aid Society and the Durham African Canadian community based on respectful engagement and consultation that will result in a responsive relationship that serves the best interest of the Durham African Canadian community and fulfills the ideal mandate of the Durham Children's Aid Society and its execution of anti-oppressive practices. That's a full mouth, that's a mouthful, but in the process of how we worked through that, then what we take from this vision statement now is how are we going to execute and realize all of this, and this evening's meeting is part of that process. So what I'd like to do now is just to take the opportunity to ask the members of the Community Advisory Council, the staff and board of the Durham Children's Aid Society to individually introduce themselves in that order. So first of all, the members of the Community Council, just get up and just introduce yourself so that the community can see who you are, spending your time doing all this wonderful work. So,
Sandra Forsyth.
Sandra Forsyth, yes.
Raphael Francis.
Yes, Community Advisory Council members.
Akila Hanif Jabari.
Randy Bala Christian, member of the board.
Leroy Clark, CAC.
Dawn Walcott Harris, staff.
And Michelle Davis, also a member of the board.
Brian Bucket, member of the board.
And Wanda Secord, staff.
Great, awesome. Now, one of the things that when we're going to have meetings and we're going to discuss issues, and there are sometimes these are burning issues for us, we can get quite emotional. And so my job here as the moderator this evening is really to set the stage and to create the frame within which we can have good dialogue, great conversation, good dialogue, and without really shying away from those issues which are burning issues for us. But we have it in a context of respect and collaboration. So what I'm going to do is just kind of go very quickly through some of the rules of engagement, as we say, or working agreements that will frame the discussion. And the first rule is that we all have a shared responsibility for the success of this meeting. I always used to say to people when we have meetings, there's no passenger on this bus. You know, we're all drivers. We're moving together. We are individually and collectively responsible for interacting with each other respectfully. We listen to understand, as Stephen Covey. How many of you heard of Stephen Covey? 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Yes. So we seek first to understand. So we listen to understand. And what is that process? That process is asking questions before telling your opinions. Not having side conversations or being disruptive. Suspending your judgment and just keeping an open mind, open heart. Being mindful of the messages that your body language suggests. Okay, so I could be up here and people are shooting daggers at me and I can feel it and oh my gosh. So be careful about that. We speak from our own experiences and we tell our own stories using I statements. You statements are accusatory. We speak out of our own subjective experience. And we speak honestly and as respectfully as possible. And there's an environment where everyone is, well, as the brother said, we speak and we're heard. So we're expecting everybody to be heard. And we're going to maintain that environment. And also we have to recognize that we have people here of different backgrounds, different experiences, and different comfort levels, maybe with various issues that probably may arise. And so what we're saying, my job again, is to ensure and to guarantee that the context, the frame, the container within which we're going to have this discussion is going to be it's not going to just break open and water spread all over the place, as they say. Okay? And we'll respect each other's boundaries, as they say. They used to say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. What happens here stays here. We'll respect people's confidentiality, anything that people share. That's part of that respect. Okay? Any questions, any issues around the frame that we have set and the stage that we have set for this discussion? Okay, Great. So what I'm going to call upon now, Brian, right? You're going to do the, Brian is going to do a building bridges, a presentation here on the formation and mandate of the CAC, and one is going to talk about the channels of access to Durham Children's Aid Society and anti-oppression strategies.
So that's just for, first of all, thanks to Larry, and thank everybody for coming. Can everybody hear me in the back? You can't hear too well. How about if I do that? Is it actually working? Can you hear me now? Okay. Just wave at me if you can't hear me again. My voice tends to drop as I start to talk. Just quickly, the agenda. So we've done the introduction. I will introduce the Community Advisory Council, and then we'll cover the other items on this list as we go through. We're hoping that we will go through this lengthy list in relatively short order and allow at least around 45 minutes or so for questions afterwards. So what I want to talk about, these are just, I'll just leave one slide up again. That's just what Larry just went over.
Yeah, I just went through that.
Yeah, so Larry just went over that. I want to give you a little bit of history because, as Larry said, this is the third Building Bridges event, but it's also the first because the first two Building Bridges events were very much organized by the agency. Tonight's meeting is organized by the CAC, by the Community Advisory Council. And so this is really very much a first. This is not a meeting that was organized by anybody other than a tripartite group, the agency, board members, and the community members on the CAC, which is, I think, brings quite a different focus to the meeting and hopefully to how we will move forward in terms of what we're doing. So I want to tell you a little bit about the history of how this happened. About just over a year ago, last spring, I received a letter as president of the board from some of the people who are in this room, from Leroy and Akila and Leland Gouge and Sandra. And the letter was to me as board president saying, we think there is a need for something more than just these ad hoc community meetings, good though they are. We think there's a need for more. And essentially what the letter said, based on feedback from the community, they said there was a need to, and I quote from the letter, to move beyond round table events and to establish an effective, accountable, and sustainable body comprised of representatives of the community. And again, picking up on what Larry said, while setting up this body, the letter acknowledged may begin with the Black community as its focus. The idea from the beginning is to be more than just for the Black community, but to also involve other community leaders and stakeholders who also have an interest in the AO journey, who also will have their own feelings of oppression and their own imbalances of power that they have to deal with the agency. So right from that very first letter, although it was written by members of the African or Black community, they're calling out and saying, our vision is something more than just that. It's something that creates a vehicle for dealing with all oppressed minority groups and gives them a voice. And the letter went on to say, such a body would provide ongoing community input and advice to both the board of directors and senior management in enhancing services to marginalized children, youth, and families, as well as in maintaining effective engagement, relationship building, and collaboration between the agency and Durham's minoritized communities. They then went on to say that it is critical that this committee involve both the operations and the governance level, as many of the issues identified are associated with systemic and structural changes for which the board's awareness and support to the executive director and other staff will be critical. So they asked that as a result, in order to meet this need, that the Durham CAS Board of Directors create a group comprising of board members with the agency's executive and other management to begin meeting with an interim ad hoc group, basically the people who wrote the letter, in order to develop draft terms of reference for the standing committee. We discussed this letter at the board level. We discussed it with senior management. And we thought it would be something very worthwhile. It was welcome to receive this kind of initiative right from the community. Pretty much we tried to set up a structure that would allow exactly what was asked for. The only thing that was slightly different, just a very slight tweak, is rather than making it a committee of the board, it was created as a committee of the agency in order to address the specific request which asked that things be able to be discussed at this community, both governance and operations issues. The board of directors of this agency is very much a governance board, deals with high-level policy, if you like, guidance, and much more general, doesn't really get into day-to-day operations. Wanda, as the executive director, is sort of our gateway into the agency, but really at the board level, our jurisdiction, if you like, is really to deal with governance matters. And we felt strongly, both because it was called out in the letter itself, the need to discuss operational matters, but also we felt if you're going to involve the community and say we want to be a gateway for community feedback, the last thing you want is saying, well, that one isn't in my job description. You know, that's operations, we can't talk about that. You end up saying a lot of no's over things that sound like you're avoiding issues rather than dealing with them. So we very much wanted to create a body that is a committee of the agency as opposed to of the board, which then allows it to discuss matters that are operational as well as governance. Now, you have to be careful about that because obviously no committee is going to be able or want, or is it desirable, to talk about individual cases. That there's all sorts of issues, privacy issues and other things that won't happen. But even if an individual case is somehow brought to a member, the idea is, can you extract systemic issues that can be dealt with? Can you deal with it at a systemic level? So it's not a committee that's meant to solve individual problems in that way. It is right from its mandate to look at systemic issues in the end. So the board approved this. The agency agreed that there should be something. The timing was really good because we were just doing last year doing our new strategic plan for the agency and for the board. And one of the pillars of that strategic plan was very much community outreach and dealing with the community. So it really was good timing because we were able to say, not only do we think it's a good idea, it fits exactly with the vision we have and the strategic plan we have for the agency. So, and Wanda, I give her credit from the agency point of view, was very supportive of this. And over the course of last summer, that group, the original people who wrote the letter, myself and Michelle Davis, who's here, one of my fellow board members, Wanda and a couple of others from the agency, we met a few times over the summer to try and develop the terms of reference, which is basically the working rules by which the board will, or by which the committee, the CAC, will meet in the end. So what you have on this slide is an idea, is basically an outline of the structure. Our mandate is clearly defined. The purpose of the council is to provide a collaborative and transparent forum to raise and discuss systemic issues. Again, I highlighted systemic issues. We really have to focus at that level. We can't focus on individual cases. But it's meant to be collaborative, exactly the way Larry described. Those rules of engagement, which Larry had up at the beginning, those aren't just rules for this meeting. Those are the rules that we've adopted for our meetings. And so very much meant to be transparent, meant to be open, but respectful. We understand that there are 3 different voices at the table, at least. I would say there are 13 different voices at the table, but certainly in terms of the groups, there are 3 different voices, and we understand that we did bring different perspectives to it. So it's respectful, and it's to deal with systemic issues related to child welfare in Durham regions, Black and or oppressed communities, and to make suggestions and recommendations to the attention of the society. So the suggestions and recommendations is another key thing I want to highlight. Ultimately, the council doesn't have the power to force changes. I would suspect from a legal point of view, the agency doesn't have the power to delegate its own authority to an outside body and say, you make decisions for us and then we'll implement them. It just simply doesn't happen that way. So at its root, it is an advisory council. It makes recommendations. But those recommendations, especially if they're discussed in an open, transparent way, and especially if they're a consensual recommendation where you have members of the community, members of the board, and members of the agency all making the recommendation in a consensual way, pretty good chance it's going to carry a lot of weight at the end of the day. So how are we organized? There's a diverse membership from these 3 main sources: community leaders, Durham CAS, and from the board. We talked about the numbers. How do you figure out the numerical issue? We want to keep a number that is large enough to create the right balance between the 3 groups, but not so large as to make it unmanageable. So we settled on 13 for the sake of proving that none of us are superstitious of anything else. We 7 community leaders. So we started off, frankly, thinking, well, it needs to be at least a couple of people from the board and a couple of people from the agency. The letter had specifically called for certain members of the agency. So the letter initially pretty much contemplated 3 agency members. And as a result, we thought the balance would be 3 board members. Well, now you've got 6 people. You don't want to be in a position where those 6 have too much power. So that made the number of community members at least 7. And that's kind of how the number ended up being 13 at the end of the day. And the idea is very much to work together in a common goal. So it's an advisory, consultative capacity, makes recommendations to improve service experience of children, youth, and family. We very much envision this to be a 2-way street of communication. It's not just the community bringing things to the agency. Sometimes I can well see the agency bringing things to the community members and saying, here's something we're trying to do, here's an initiative, or here's a problem we're encountering. So there very much should be, at the end of the day, 3-way communication between the board members, the agency, and the community. And the idea is to identify challenges and opportunities around systemic issues, including racism, and to advance community engagement. We've met so far, I'm going to say 4 times. The first meeting happened right around the time as the board term started in last fall. The meeting adopted the terms of reference that had been adopted, the very first meeting, adopted the rules of engagement that you've already seen. And we've had some pretty lively discussions already. It's a process that's going to be very much a learning process for all of us in terms of where we're going. The idea is ultimately the vision would be for this council to become the gateway for the community into the agency. So, as it says at the bottom here, the advisory council is available to address any concerns from the community, and that's very much how we see it happening, that we see agenda being developed based on feedback from the community. It's a co-chair system. Wanda and Sandra, so community member and the executive director, are co-chairs. They develop the agenda together based on what they see as things that are appropriate to bring into the next meeting. And our meetings last usually a few hours, sometimes longer than we plan because of the nature of the discussion. And there are very much 3 voices. The board brings its own perspective, the agency its own, and obviously the community as well. When I say it's meant to be a gateway, there are different ways that we would hope the community can engage us. You probably know most of the members and the community members, and we're hoping the community will feel free to contact them directly. Durham CAS has set up an email address, which you see on the left side of that slide, which is buildingbridges@durhamcas.ca. That email address is monitored. People can send in emails over there. There's a phone number, which will also give you access. And both Sandra and Leo have kindly put up their own telephone numbers and their own email as well. So issues that come in through them will be discussed by the co-chairs and figured out where to put in terms of the agenda and in terms of the priorities at the end of the day. The idea is to remain very much accessible to members of the community. As I said, in the end, this is a first. I think it is the first community advisory council in the province for any agency. Tonight's meeting is a first. It's the first meeting that's organized by the council as opposed to by the agency. And I like the idea of a 10-year window. I would love to see where this gets us in 10 years. I can promise you we won't solve racism by then. I can promise you we won't solve biases. I will still be biased, as will, I would think, many of you that care to admit it. We won't solve those big issues. But if we can get closer, if we can acknowledge them, if we can figure out ways to try to talk about them, then I, for one, will think we'll have achieved a lot more than by not talking and pretending they don't exist in the first place. So, we have to differ about our expectations at the end of the day. But I think, from what I'm seeing, people's hearts are in the right place. We respect each other. We all ultimately have the same goal. We want to make this region a better place for our children, especially the ones with the least amount of power. And we'd like to do that, and we'll have different views as to how to achieve that. And hopefully with the different views, we will be able to bring that together and get something and improve. So that's a bit of maybe a longer introduction I want to give you, but that hopefully gets a bit of perspective from where we're coming from. And I'll turn it over to Wanda to go over the rest of the slides.
You have to step carefully over these wires. Thank you very much, Brian, for that introduction. So I have the next few slides, and I just want to tell you that this PowerPoint presentation is very difficult for you to see, especially those in the back half of the audience. So this will be posted on our Building Bridges website. So you will be able to see this and look at it in more detail. So as you know, this is our third meeting, as already been said, and we have talked about our comprehensive anti-oppressive practice strategy that we have been working on now for the last 5 years. We have had many accomplishments, and we have much more work to do still. It does not end. That's what I know about anti-oppressive practice. And we have identified priority work in the agency. So I know you can't see this, but I just want to pick on a few items in terms of key accomplishments to date. Out of the many, I think one of the things that we are very proud of collectively is that we do have a community advisory council. We do have a terms of reference has already been talked about. We have shared the agency needs assessment around anti-oppressive practice and the work plan or the roadmap that has been shared with the council members, and it does form part of our agenda on an ongoing basis. We, of course, are very proud of the work that we've done within the organization, establishing an ongoing anti-oppressive practice steering committee, and we have several subcommittees of that group, and many of the folks that are involved in those subcommittees, and you can just even wave your hands, are here tonight as well. So thank you very much for coming out. You will hear specifically about our Collective Hands Committee and work being done for programs for youth as part of this presentation. We have applied the anti-oppressive practice lens to recruitment within the organization on all levels, whether that's staff, foster caregivers, and our board of directors. Another point that we are very proud of is the work that we have been doing around doing a staff census survey, which we have completed. We had an outside third-party service, the Canadian Centre for Diversity and Inclusion, did a survey for our staff in the fall, and you'll hear a little bit more about that in this presentation. Many of you have been involved with the One Vision, One Voice provincial feedback systems. You were all there, or many of you were, and the feedback session that was about a year ago now. So we, as an organization, have supported that work and will be supporting that work going forward. Particularly as we work to, if we move to the other side of the screen, which you really can't see, integrating One Vision, One Voice recommendations into the work of the agency. And we see that through things such as the complaints process, programs for youth, and our board's commitment to this work. In terms of the staff diversity and inclusion survey, the report that we received in January, we will be sharing that throughout the organization and do follow-up planning around improving that work. So I just wanted to highlight a very few things there. One last thing that I'd like to call out is the Afrocentric service partnerships with ACLC and community service providers. One of the pieces of work that we're doing with ACLC is with their youth and transition worker, who is actually at our organization, and will be doing work with our Youth Preparation for Independence, AO Lead, with some programming for youth, and we're very excited about that. So moving on to some of the key issues and concerns that have been raised by the community over the last couple of Building Bridges forums are agenda items that we are working on at the Advisory Council. So they are in three particular areas. One is around access to Durham CAS. So issues that have been raised around clarifying the complaints process, because it is fairly complicated. There are internal complaints process, there's Child and Family Services Review Board process, there's the Provincial Advocate for Children and Youth, which is another complaint process. So what we have done is we have created an infographic for ease of looking at. You'll see there's some handouts at the back, but we will also, actually they are posted as of the last few days on our website. Similarly, there were concerns about how does one navigate or know how to navigate what is called community caregiver investigation processes. Some of you may know that as serious occurrence processes, and these are investigations that involve caregivers or others such as schools, daycares, foster homes, outside private operators that provide group and foster care. So when an allegation of harm to a child is raised, how are those processes undertaken? So once again, we have developed an infographic that hopefully will make that easier to navigate. One of the things that we have been hearing from the community, you may recall in our November of 2015 that the session, the meeting was at Durham CAS offices. And there was some concern that it was more comfortable to have those meetings outside the office. So the last one and this one are outside of the office. And I just want to call out to Leroy, who obtained this space for tonight's meeting. And finally, and I think Brian has talked about this to a great extent, so I won't belabor the point, but the standing forum and channel to continue discussions with Durham CAS, and that is the creation of the Community Advisory Council. So we're very pleased that those 4 items that have been identified have been addressed. Moving to another area of concern is service delivery and strategic initiatives. One of the things that I just wanted to call out on a very high level is that there is a new act being contemplated for children's aid societies, and currently it is known as Bill 89, Children and Youth, which is in addition to that, Youth and Family Services Act. So that is in the process of review, and it will be proclaimed next spring. One of the points that I'd like to highlight is that a child or youth's culture, ethnicity, language, sexual orientation, and many other factors that have not been previously called out have been identified as being taken into consideration around the best interest protection and well-being of children. So it's enshrined within Bill 89. Other strategic or service delivery initiatives are the African Canadian Community Services, and we did touch on this last year. That is in progress. We do understand that program has been approved, but at this point, the African Canadian Legal Clinic is awaiting ministry funding in order to proceed. And we, Durham CAS, are one of the children's aid societies that will be partnering in this pilot project. And finally, the Durham Culturally Specific Services. There was a number of agencies or services that were identified early on, right, Sandra and Akila, as services within the community. A number of those have been contacted, and we've collected information about those services. There is still more work to be done in this area, and we will be bringing that back to CAC around next steps, including a potential for an evolved request. Originally it was around a resource list, to complete a resource list, but now we're looking at, is there potential to do something else, like a vetted resource list potentially? So we'll be having that conversation at CAC. And the third area is around anti-oppressive practice. I think many of you in this room know about our anti-oppressive practice infrastructure at Durham CAS. Of course, our anti-oppressive practice integration leader is the subject matter expert. We have a large system in place, our steering committee and subcommittees. I was going back through a great fat file folder of all of our AO steering committees earlier today. And we did start that structure in October of 2014. So it's about 2.5 years on that we have established this. Preparation for Independence AO Lead. You'll hear from Rosalie in a few moments. But the leadership team, of course, provides support and the drive behind our anti-oppressive practice. Really, we're looking at cascading AOP throughout the organization. Another very important element that has been discussed at previous meetings and has been discussed, it was actually the first recommendation coming from the council, was about the change of the AO leaders' reporting lines to the executive director. You'll see this is a piece in progress. The decision at this time has been not to change the reporting relationship, and I will understand at this time. And it is because, unfortunately, our AO integration leader is on an extended leave. One point of clarification around the AO support model and who is promoting and ensuring that AO is moving forward at the agency in the absences of our AO integration leader. And those are carried out by myself, members of the leadership team, management team, our Independence AO lead, our steering committee and subcommittee. So we are looking to have this work, which is very important, and cascade throughout the organization. In the last month, as this situation continued, I did make an arrangement with one of our colleague children's aid societies to access their anti-oppressive practice lead for more complex case consultations. So that has been a useful arrangement. One of the other areas in AO was around the adequacy of our policies to address racism experienced by staff internally and at the hands of service recipients and families. And we have talked about this in previous meetings, but here we're going to be looking to the community to see whether or not any additional clarity is required. And finally, the racial proportionality at Durham CAS has been an item identified, and as I mentioned a few moments ago, that we did have a staff diversity and inclusion survey completed in the fall. And I will speak about a few key findings around that. Wanted to call out a few key statistics, and these come from the Inclusion and Diversity Survey. That 25% of our staff identified as racialized. And the comparison is made between our staff complement to the region of Durham, and that compares at 20.07%, compared against 24.72% of the labor force in Ontario, and compared with 18.01% of the labor force in Canada. So Durham CAS is situated quite well in terms of our agency being reflective of our community. Within that same study, 26.23% of management team identifies as racialized. And more granularly, 10.1% of staff identify as Black, and 15.74% of caseworkers identify as Black. A couple of other service stats that are quite important, particularly when we're hearing about disproportionality of Black children and youth in care. 13.39% of children are identified as Black or Black mix in our care, and that has been fairly consistent around the 13%, between 13 and 14% since our meeting in November of 2015. Also, 25% of Durham CAS foster parents identify as Black or Black mix. At this point, I'm really pleased to introduce Beverly Blackburn, who is the chair of the Collective Hands group, as well as Rosalie Morgan, who is the Preparation for Independence Anti-Oppressive Practice Lead, who will give you a brief overview of some of the work that's being done at the agency. Beverly and Rosalie.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Yes, yes, okay. No, someone shaking it. Okay, okay, I'll speak as loud as I can. So as Rhonda said, that we are part of the Collective Hands Committee. Collective Hands was formed about 8 years ago. We have a member, also one of the committee members in the front there, Kevin Anderson, and he will come up and speak at some point. So just wanted to give you a little overview, a summary of what the Collective Hands Committee has done over the last year. So over the last year, first of all, we recognize as a committee and acknowledge how systemic oppression, power and privilege impacts the Black, African and Caribbean community, not only in the Durham region, but globally. We acknowledge the unique experiences of children, youth and families we serve. It is also important to note that this is directly in line with the Durham CIS vision, mission and AO directional statement. This knowledge compels us as agents of change to be accountable for how our services either further oppress or support the children, youth and families. So by building hope through positive engagement and education and opportunities, the goals of the committee are as follows: to educate Black youth about their culture, to empower Black youth to bring about change in their world, to educate them around the importance of identity, development of strong understanding of roots, spirituality, and sexual identity, the importance of identity development during adolescence stage as Black youth in care. How do we feel that we can achieve these goals? We feel that these goals can be most effectively be achieved and accomplished through programming for our youth in care, Black youth in care. So once a month, the Collective Hands run a group program, and that's the second Monday in every month. And I'm just going to go through just a few things that we have covered over the last year at this program. Just to say that we have at least 10 to 15 youth that attend consistently every month, and they look forward to attending the group. One thing that we found when the group started is that these Black youth were excited to see other people that look like them, staff that they can identify with. So I just want to say we are very passionate about this. We feel very privileged that we can actually run this group, and we're also happy that leadership actually sanctions this as well, and it's part of the AO journey within the society. So we have run groups, and we have professional Black people that come in and speak to our youth. So we run groups like for skin and hair care. So we have professional hairdressers that will come in and speak to youth about their hair. Sometimes what we have noticed that not all of our Black youth can be placed in same race placements. So therefore, there's sometimes not the understanding of how to about the skin care, the hair care. So we would have someone come in and speak about that. We also do things like, we've had classes on cultural cooking. So we cook food of African, Caribbean, because sometimes that's also if we're not doing a cooking class, we will buy in Caribbean and African food so that they can partake of it. We also have things like a round table. So we would like to hear from the Black youth, what is it that they want? And then we try to tailor each session around the things that we've discussed, what they have identified. That we also speak to them about how they feel the groups are running. Is there something that we could do differently? We recently, and we have had in the past, a motivational speaker, and it was phenomenal at the group, how the youth interacted, they took part, they were interested. It was, the speaker did an exercise, so gave them a piece of paper and a pen, and they had to write down things like what their dreams were, what their aspirations were. There was a discussion around how they feel that they're viewed within the community as Black youth. There was also a discussion around them as individuals, that they're important, how they should feel about themselves as a Black person, that it shouldn't always come over as negative, not because you're Black, it should be a negative thing. So it's we put on programs to try and ensure that we motivate our Black youth and help them to raise their self-esteem, so that when they leave our care, that they can go into society and fit in society, but feel part of society and not feel that it's negative to be a Black individual. We also do fun things with them because as a committee, we like to engage with the youth. So we do things like arts and crafts with them, we've taken them bowling, we've gone to the movies, and it is quite rewarding to see how they respond, because initially, 8 years ago when this committee started, if you saw the faces of some of these young people when they saw us as staff, it was just amazing. They didn't even know us, and they come up and they're hugging us and they're excited. And what we've also found, we keep a record, a register of all of our children that attend our groups. And what we found that sometimes we don't even have to ring the caregivers to say it's our group this month. The youth will be ready and come. Sometimes they even come on days that we're not even running the group, because that's how much they benefit from attending. We also have 2 other major events that we run each year, and that's Black History and also Emancipation Day. At Black History, we always have a theme. And last year, one of our themes was to do with the Black experience. The media is not the message. We've also had one theme as around education. So we seek to educate our Black youth, tell them, educate them around their history and their culture as well. And so at this time, I'm going to ask Kevin to come up and just speak a bit about, because recently, in 2016, we partnered with Toronto CAS. They run a program every year, and the program is called Soul Journey, and it's an annual project which has been running for over 10 years. The Soul Journey is an annual educational trip which focuses on connecting Black youth to their culture in Canada and America. And we had the opportunity to send 3 of our youth from the programming group to Nova Scotia. And at this time, I'm going to ask Kevin to come up, because Kevin was the member of Collective Hands that went.
So Kevin,
Yeah,
2 minutes.
No, I'm not one that likes the mic anyway, so I'll just say that I'm here in the room, and if anybody'd like to speak to me after, they could definitely talk to me. What Beverly explained was exactly what happened. Myself and 3 youth were able to go out to Nova Scotia and just sharing the culture of Black people and and how Black people first came to this country through Nova Scotia. Majority of Black people, the first comers were to Nova Scotia. So, and all the things that we did, I mean, we stayed at Dalhousie University, we seen Africville, we seen Fort Citadel, and learned that it was a great deal of Jamaican Maroons that built Fort Citadel. We were able to go to the monument of the Black loyalists that came, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, I'm here in the room if anybody wants to talk to me about that trip, and we're also making a proposal to try and go again this year. So.
Hi, so I'm Rosalie Morgan, and I wear many hats, being an AOP lead. However, I'm just going to talk about what we're looking at in terms of specifically for tonight's event. So we're trying to, this is a new position for me, so what I'm trying to do is linkage, and that means connecting with different community organizations, not just in the Durham region, but also places like Toronto, anywhere in Ontario, who kind of share the same passion that we do in terms of working with our youth and finding things that are motivational for our youth, but also to help them to connect with their identity. So at this point, we are with the agency is working with the ACCS on a project called the Imani Healing Circle, and it's basically working with youth who have experienced trauma based on their experience, whether it's with the child welfare system or the judicial system, and to have these youths be able to, in a safe place, talk about the things that affects them the most and look at ways that we can move forward. We're also working with the Hair Stories Initiative, and that is through Delta Family Resource Center, and they also do the BYT, which is Black Youth in Transition Program as well. So we're doing a lot of collaboration with them. Last year we did a program where we were away for 1 week, myself and I believe it was 8 youth. And it was the most amazing experience that I've ever had, and it was very, very humbling. I saw Black youth, not just youth in care, but youth in the community as well. And just let me tell you, these kids are very, very empowered. These kids want changes. They just need us, the adults, to listen. And basically what they're saying is that we understand that you guys want to make decisions, but if you're making decisions about us, you need to bring us to the table. We need to be present in groups like this. We need the people who are the decision makers to hear what we're saying, because you cannot make decisions without bringing us to the table. We're also looking at the Rites of Passage, which is a program that looks at trying to educate our older youth in terms of having access to their story, to their history, and by doing so, become community leaders themselves. We work with the Black Educational Awareness Committee through Toronto CAS in regards to the Soul Journey. And again, we're just at this point trying to find different ways that we can connect our youth. So when they become adults and we're no longer involved in the way that we are right now, that they've connected with their community. They know where to go. They know how to do basic things such as cook Caribbean food. So we're trying to make sure that they have those skills, and as an agency, make sure that we're equipping our youth as best as we can.
Larry, just as you're coming up, I just want to say thank you to Beverly, to Rosalie, and to Kevin. I know we've taken a little bit more time than had been intended, but they're just so passionate about the work that they're doing with the youth. So thank you very much for what you do every single day.
Great. Awesome. Lots of good work.
Oh, I just want one more thing to say.
I shouldn't have
I
said
totally forgot that. But in regards to the Collective Enhanced program, we've actually extended it to our youth who are not in care as well. Because what we found was a lot of our youths, once they were returned home, this was like the common ground for them, and they requested that if they could come back and participate in our groups and our meetings. So management has made that available for us to get drivers to pick up the kids and to make sure that the kids do get there.
Awesome. Great. So we're hearing lots of social innovation, lots of things which we're addressing, lots of things that I didn't know. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to take a 5-minute break, And then when we come back, we will start part 2 of our discussion this evening, where now the community can raise questions and make comments about the issues that you've heard here. So 5 minutes, and we'll reconvene.